This is another episode of Stewards of History, and today I sit with well-known collector Jason Pate. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know we've been trying to plan this for a while, so I'm glad it finally worked out.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm thankful for the opportunity and enjoy the experience with you for the next few minutes.
Well, I'm looking forward to discussing not only your collecting journey, but also some items that you have in your own collection. But just to get started, when did the Civil War bug bite you? When did you actually start getting interested in the Civil War?
So I'm a history teacher now. I teach U.S. history, but I didn't really like history as much in high school. I was the kid who could memorize everything, so it was an easy class. But the Civil War bug did not bite me till about 7 or 8 years ago. So my wife had been going through a lot of health issues, and I had become interested in images. And for some reason, just kind of an odd, like I connected with them on a personal level, because I think there's a difference between an image and like a gun or a bullet. Like you can have a gun, but it's kind of hard to have an emotional connection with that piece. Whereas an image, it's someone who looks like you, has a story like you. And so it kind of came connected with images. And then in the process of that, an image came available for sale in our area. And so I ended up looking at it and I posted it online. I had no idea what it was. I thought it was a New Yorker. Totally wrong. It was complete reb. Ended up buying that image and making money off of it. And then it hit me. I said, what if I could do this on the side and just do it for money, right? And make extra cash. And what happened is I fell in love with it. And the person I was going to buy and just do this with the money on the side ended up falling in love with it and collecting it. I actually have a picture. I sold that image, but I know where it's at now. It's my friend has it. This is the first image that I ever acquired. It was a half plate Louisiana soldier there. And it actually came with his civilian image now. And so that is in the collection of a friend of mine who owns that. And so once you have that quality, it just becomes ingrained in you. And that's when I caught the bug. And ever since then, it's almost like an illness, man. And that's fun.
So when you are, I know like you were saying that you used to sell a little bit, now you're starting to collect. I know some people who are dealers and collectors, they tend to have a very niche collecting subject. What do you primarily collect, or what catches your eye?
I'm that person who deals, and also I deal in order to fuel my collection. As a teacher and not make enough money, so I work on soldiers who are from or have served in Obion County, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. That was island number 10, the big battle there on the Mississippi River. Those are the guys who are leaving Columbus, Kentucky, a lot of them. A lot of people end up serving here in our county. I've tried to collect them and start slowly bringing them back and bringing those stories back to life. And then if it doesn't fit, I collect a little bit of Tennessee overall, just as a Tennessean. It's kind of like a pride thing, but really focusing in on Obion County. If it doesn't fit one of those two categories, then it's something that's bought just simply to fuel the collection. So when something comes available, it's mine.
Well, you were just sharing that first image, which I really love. You know, it's the image that got you addicted. Do you have some other images that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. So I have a few here. I have blow-ups of a few, so it's a little easier to see. So the second image that I acquired, this is currently in the hands of Phil McCoy. A few months later, another guy came and said, "Hey, I hear you buy images," and it was a quad-armed Confederate that came through our area. This is now current. This has been in military image magazines under Phil has it. So this was another one of my first images that I picked and sold as a dealer. Well, not dealer, just a new guy trying to get into it. For me, this image will always be important. I got really fortunate to have some of the best mentors in the game, and Kevin Kenberg, Rick Brown, and Doug York, and so many of these guys who are just phenomenal. And so they got me connected with Military Image Magazine, and my students got to write in Military Image Magazine, got to be a part of that. They had their own collection. They had all that. And so this is, as a teacher, this is a really big moment. Our school system celebrated this moment. We had it was publicized. We were the front page of the paper. And this is the Capitol building there at Nashville. And so that is a very special one for me. This is this is actually my book, The Journey of a Plowboy. And it is based on an image. The image currently is at the bank vault. But it is a double-armed Confederate soldier in which I own the image to and all the letters. And that is kind of hard to tell. The lighting, it's C.W. Hubert. And so, and then my last one that I just absolutely, I've told my children they sell it, then I haunt them, is this image right here. It's kind of hard to tell. This is Columbus, Kentucky. And right here where my finger is a contraband boy who was a slave, who entered and helped out with the Illinois soldiers. And so Columbus is 20 miles from me. And so it's a very important place that we go and visit often. And to have an image there of the contraband with the soldiers, of a place that I stand on regular, it brings that back to life for me. And so those to me have been some of the most important images that I've owned. And I'll send you links to those too, so you can add those and get you a better quality shot of everything. But just things like that. It doesn't have to be an expensive piece for me to love it. It just has to be something that connects with me emotionally and home.
Well, I appreciate you really sharing those images with us. And I'd like to elaborate on that if you can. I often hear this discussion within the community, within the hobby, about content versus condition. Now, you shared some images. The last one, particularly wonderful image. The condition may be a little bit poor, but what is it about, the content? I think the content, sometimes people don't look at the content enough. Sometimes they just look at the condition and they forget a good image is still a good image, right? I mean, what do you say?
To me, it's about the emotional process that I go through and I look at an image. To me, image is also art. And so when you go to an art museum and you stand in front of a piece, right? What makes it good art in that moment? What brings that? What does it bring? What does that art piece bring out in you? So for me, like, I look at that Columbus image and I go, man, yeah, the condition isn't the greatest. It's kind of washed out at times. There's other ones, but man, just knowing what happened and the emotion that comes with that. I have another one here, kind of going with that content over condition. So this is James Webb. I'll kind of get a little closer for you. And James grew up in the great state of New York until his father passed. And his father passed, he ends up having to move to Texas. When he moves to Texas with his mom to live with his uncle, he, at teenage years, joins the Texas Rangers, right? And he's fighting Indians and he's doing all this cool stuff. And when the Texas left and joined the Confederacy, the Texas Rangers all joined the Confederacy. They immediately create their own little regiment. Well, here's James Webb, who grew up in New York. He's loyal to the American flag. He's not really loyal to the Southern way. And he does not want to join the Confederacy, but because he's afraid if he doesn't, he's going to be killed for the most part. He joins the Confederacy. At Little Rock, he actually goes AWOL with the Texas Rangers and joins the Union Army. Someone says, hey, there's a regiment being formed in a little town called Union City, Obion County, which is where I'm from. And so James makes his way to Union City and he joins the 13th Tennessee Cav, which is right here where he signs his name into this book and wrote the Union Forever. And he wasn't with the 13th very long. It actually got consolidated. And so this was probably on him, or he wrote this in my hometown. And actually, I lived across from the fort. So he literally probably did this on the same street that I was living on at the time. So he ends up getting shipped to Fort Pillow. And he gets shipped to Fort Pillow right before the massacre. And he's there at the massacre, and he's actually running out saying, "Stop, stop, stop." He's trying to stop it. And he looks up, and lo and behold, the people who were committing the massacre at that moment were the Texas Rangers that he had went AWOL from, and they recognize him. They're going to kill him, but they literally grab him out to kill him. And what happens is somebody says, "Look, I know his uncle. He's a good man. Please don't kill him. We'll send him off to." He got sent to Andersonville, which is, I mean, is close to death, right? And he ends up, him and one other guy are the last two remaining of the massacre at Fort Pillow. And then as soon as the war's over, James goes back to New York and never enters the South again. Like, he's done, which I can't blame him after everything he's been through. So I look at that, I look at it and go, is it a great condition? No, but there's a lot. There's images, there's issues wrong with it, but the content to who he is supersedes any other, to me, than anything else. There's an emotional response to that.
One thing I would ask is, you have the image, you have the story, you even have the book that he signed, right? Mm-hmm. What is the importance of having all of these things together and keeping that story intact? Some people maybe, they're digging through their attic, they find an old album, right? And they say, "Oh, well, this soldier might be worth something." They rip it out, and we'll never know. Sometimes we'll never find out what his name was, what his regiment was, when, where did he serve, because it's lost to time now, because it passes so many hands, so many dealers. What is important about keeping all of that together, that whole history together?
I'll be the first to admit that I was really guilty about that when I first started. When I first started collecting, I look at that and go, "Man, that's $50. Now, the rest of these images aren't worth it," because I was looking at it not through a historical lens. I was looking at it through a monetary lens. And so now that it's been years, I go, "Man, I busted up that history." And it's almost like, why would I? But it was out of ignorance of the importance. I would say keeping things like this together is vital. Could I get more money for it if I split it apart? Yeah, I probably could. But the value is about being a caretaker. You're more than an owner. You're someone who's in charge of protecting this history for years to come. And if you're getting into the hobby just to be an owner, then you need to find another hobby, because the hobby is caretaking and protecting, telling these stories. Because let's face it, I teach, there's a history book. Would James Webb's story ever be in a history book? Probably not. But it's still a story worth telling. And so caretaking is, no matter what we're doing, we caretake. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I brought some stuff here next to me that, one here that I got to be very careful with is like this image here, where kind of that content versus condition, kind of hard to tell. I can't get it out. I'll send you another scan of it. Is what's called the Sleeping Beauty of Albany County. And so pretty much as a caretaker to this image, she was a lady who had a medical issue within our county, and she was worldwide known. Now, the image itself is literally almost ripped in half, but if I can take this and separate it out from the county and I don't tell the story, I failed. And we have to understand that we're caretakers of all our stuff, regardless.
Well, I love what you just said. You're talking about being a caretaker. What other tips would you have? You've been doing this for a few years. I know there's other people who might watch this or have seen other videos, or maybe they even read Military Images Magazine, who is a sponsor of the show, and they're interested in getting involved in this hobby, this being a caretaker, what tips would you have for them?
So, there's different ways, different approaches. So I want to kind of give you two approaches, and I think I'll give you mine. I guess how I fit between. I've always looked at it as shotguns and sniper rifles, right? So there's two different ways. You can take a shotgun and you can have this wide approach, right? And you're just collecting because you enjoy the soldier itself. So there's some of those guys that they have this wide collection, and you go over and it's very just, it's everywhere, but that's okay for them. And then there is the sniper rifle, which is I'm only going to collect one thing. I want to focus in. To me, I like that approach better because it makes you good at something that you do. Whereas you can be a jack of all trades, or you can be the king. And to me, I'd rather be a king than a jack any day of the week. And so for me, I tell these guys, hey, get in there, do your research, really dig, right? Whether it's just collecting a state, whether it's just collecting a battle, become the expert in that field so that when there's a problem arise, they call you. And, you look at people like Fred Taylor. He is the North Carolina guy. If there's a Fred, there's Gilbert, who I call for Georgia. You got Rick Brown for Indiana. There's all these guys who you call for specific purposes. I always found that approach to be better for me. So when it comes to buying county stories, when there's an issue in the county, guess who gets called? I'm getting called. Whereas if I just had this broad approach, probably not so much. In the same regard, it also allows you to be a lot more accountable, I think, with your money. I'm the type that if I did it very general, I would have no money left at all, right? I'd spend everything. Whereas to me now, I'm a lot more accountable. I only pick up now to keep this. So it allows me to have my money a little bit better. And then also it makes for better displays. So a couple of years ago, I got invited to do a huge display, pretty good sized display at a museum. And they took my stuff and we were able to sniper rifle it out and say, hey, look, this museum is only going to focus in on West Tennessee soldiers. Do you have anything? And I said, yeah, I got it all. What do you want? And so once again, that approach allows me to become the expert in that, and that helps a lot. So I would say pick one thing, learn that thing, focus in on that thing, or if you want to go with the shotgun approach, just make sure you got to be willing to study. Because if not, it's going to be really, really difficult.
Now, you mentioned something that I just want to dig in a little bit. You mentioned working with a museum to display your collection. Now, there's some people who would stand up and they say, oh, and I've had it with people looking at my collection. Well, shouldn't this be in a museum? Why is this being in the private collector's market? Why are these items sometimes safer or interpreted better in a private collector's market by private caretakers? Sometimes I tell people it's because the museum has a lot of it, and sometimes it just never gets displayed. But it seems that you've crossed that gap there, and you've been able to be a caretaker who has had your display, your items displayed. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one thing, when I went to, they came to me, and then I reciprocated their call. Was they wanted a very, very specific thing. So I'm going to go out to another museum soon and say, look, I have what you need for your collection. All I ask is I don't donate anything. If anything, I will give them that's all outside the copyrights, right? But I said, hey, I'll loan you a copy of my image as long as you give me credit. I don't actually give and donate any museum. And the reason why I did that was, which I don't know if it's true or not, I was always told that if a museum closes and you donate it, it becomes liquidated as part of the museum. where if it's loaned to you, then you get that back. And on the other side of things, I've always heard too. I walked into other museums. I was like, "Hey, I know you have this. Why is it not on display?" They don't have enough room. So here you have this image, which is in a stockpile of a room. Staff changes, and then guess what happens? It gets lost. So in my hands, I know where it's at. I know it's safe. You know, in fact, I even had when I wrote my book, the family came to me and said they would rather it be in my hands than in the collections of a museum, because they knew, one, the story was going to get told more, and two, I was going to keep it safe, and it was actually going to get displayed. So I would say if you want to cross into museums, I think they're more than willing to work with us. I think that we're just going to have to be specific in how we do so. If we go to a museum and we notice, hey, this is a really lacking room, maybe we do let them caretake for us with alongside of us for a while. Or we say, hey, I got images that would be great next to this piece. And to me, I want to work with museums because, one, that's publicity for me as a dealer, right? So when people come into this museum and they see my name and they see it over and over again, that gives validity to who I am. And then two, I can go with them and say, hey, you want new content every 6 months? That's great. All I got to do is come in my notebook over here, new content, here's everything written for you. And they love that. So I think it's just being intentional and building those relationships. Because most of the people who I've heard that comment, I bought a collection of letters the other day, 1850s letters, and someone was like, "Oh, this should be in the museum. I can't believe you bought it." Blah blah blah. And what they don't understand is I was going to caretake better for that collection of letters than ever was. So I think it's those people they're not trying to be rude. They're just ignorant on the care that we take. But if we can show that we're caretaking to them, I don't think they care as much as what we probably think they do, if that makes any sense, as long as they could see that we're doing good with it.
Oh, I think you really laid out a great defense, for private collectors, and that's awesome. Another thing I would say is, I guess the other end of it, or the double-edged sword, is that when people are collecting, I would also encourage people to share as well. Try to talk to Military Images Magazine, do what you're doing now, because I know some people, even though they're great caretakers, they do kind of stuff things into a vault and they never come out again, and that doesn't help further research and understanding of history, right?
Yeah. And I think there's that concern that if they share that one or two things are going to happen. One, their images are going to be copied, right, from other people and then shared all over Facebook, and that hurts, especially when you've dropped $5,000 or $6,000 to an image, right? It's personal. I mean, it's not personal property, but at the same time, it is like it's an investment that you made. And two is a lot of guys I've talked to says, hey, I don't want to post online because I don't want to be bombarded with the messages of people trying to lowball me or trying to buy it, something I want to caretake for. So yeah, I agree we should share. And everything that I have has been open source in the time that I've had it. But I've also heard those other guys who say, look, I don't want to be bombarded all the time. And that is a very real thing that, if I post an image online, there's been times I've been hit 10, 15, 20 messages on that image. So I do see it both sides, but I think lending out to Military Image Magazine is one of the best things that anyone can do. Ron runs an amazing organization there and company. And I think that Military Image Magazine gives each image the respect it deserves. And I think he does a great job of telling the stories, and it just continues that on. I would highly encourage, if someone is going to share it through Military Image Magazine. I think it's one of the best things that is on the market.
I would for sure say that maybe if people are afraid of sharing or how they can share while still protecting their property that they've invested in, definitely going through an expert like Military Images Magazine, instead of just posting it online, going through a proper published magazine like that is definitely the way to go. That way I feel that you would be satisfied in both areas. You're able to share while staying safe with your investment.
Exactly. Highly, highly encourage it. I've done it multiple times. I've never had a bad interaction with any of Ron or with any of his editors. They've always been helpful, and I just highly encourage that process.
Now, I just have a couple questions for you before I let you go. I know you've got things to do. But the last couple questions first is, this has come up a couple times, but what do you think about AI? This has been a recent conversation coming up now in regards to people making images using artificial intelligence now. In the hobby is always growing. There's always new things, new technology. What do you think about AI coming into the space?
I've really been hit back and forth. I think Adam Fletcher and I were talking about this a couple months ago, even about the AI introduction. So I haven't played with AI very much. I played with it a little bit the other day just to see the ability of it. And I'll be honest with you, it's a little intimidating. I think it's going to make us have to be very good at our craft. One thing is we're going to have to, look at that CDV, or we have to like study it so much now where we can tell the difference in the fakes and there's going to be a lot of more study that we're going to have to do, because it is going to be a lot more fakes on the market. And I wish I could answer that and tell you how do we tell the difference, because some of them are so realistic. But I think it's just we're going to have to study the real deal, so when the counterfeit comes, we know. I kind of fear these new poses that are going to come up, that we haven't seen before, a new surfaced image, But one thing too is Stan Hudson and I were talking about this, I guess about 2-3 months ago. Stan runs the Alabama Facebook site through Alabama Images or something like that. Is knowing the chain of ownership of an image. That's going to be so vital for us as the AI comes in. And so let's say, hey, where did this image come from? I bought this image off of this person, off this time. And that way we can prove where stuff comes in at. There's enough of us there that we can go back and say that image is so forth. Whereas maybe 5 years ago, I didn't think that was important. Now I'm really looking at it going, chain of ownership to figure out where these images are coming from is probably a lot more vital than what we, have given it credit for. And we need something that we probably all need to start, even if it's in our own notebook of where we bought stuff from, and document it so that when AI does come out, we can say, hey, that's fake or that's real. At least gives us a starting point to work with.
Well, you've made a lot of great points, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. Last but not least, if people want to learn more about the images that you might deal or collect, is there a place they can look? And also, if someone is eagerly coming into the hobby, where should they go to get started?
So my stuff, I'm working on hopefully the next year building out a site for myself, a website, just something that has my images, not so much a selling point as it is just a collecting point. That's something I want to do the next year or two. First, you'll see a lot of mine is in my book. I add those through there. At the end of each chapter was images of who have served Obion County and parts of my collection. And then I'll be honest, I think if you want to start off, I would go to the Civil War Faces Marketplace. Ask around, who are these reputable people who are going to take care of you? There are some great guys out there who are on that site, who sell, who are honest. There's some great dealers. I've had great experiences with Mike Medhurst, who is top notch. Doug York. I've had great experiences with Rick Brown, Adam Fletcher over at Fletcher's Auctions. Fantastic. Highly encourage them. Cowens has always done really well by me. I think if you talk around and just get advice from 2 or 3 other people, you're going to be okay. The one issue with the Civil War Faces Marketplace is with all the Facebook marketplaces right now is we're seeing such an abundance of people who are coming in that are fake accounts. And some of them are really good, right? I mean, I got hit the other day by a girl who luckily I had used goods and services because I had never dealt business with her before. And come to find out, it was a total scam. And usually I'm pretty good at marking those. And I didn't do that at that moment. So I would say if before you buy, ask for references. It's a smaller community, close knit. We're going to help you out. We're going to make sure that you don't get burned. Talk around with these guys. Talk to the moderators of the Civil War Bases Marketplace. I think you got Brendan over there. You got Fred Taylor over there. Chris is over there. They're going to help you as well. So I think it's a safe place. Just ask for references and talk around. And it's a great place to start in with some $40 images, or sometimes they go up to 4,000. And you can just work and build out your community, build out your collection that way. That's how it started.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned some names. I got to say, Mike Medhurst, Adam, Kevin Canberg, Ron Coddington have all been on the show. So it's great to have you come on. I'm still trying to get Rick Brown to come on. We're still working on that, but hopefully he'll be able to come on. One other thing before I forget that you mentioned is actually being bit, right, by one of these fake accounts. I would tell people, yes, we want to do our research. I don't want anyone to get bit. It happens. I know some people call it, that's the tuition you pay to get into the hobby, right, to learn. But I'm so glad you shared that, because if there is a novice collector out there whose collecting has been bit, it happens. Don't be ashamed. It happens to even the best of us who are really, really great at the hobby, have been collecting for years, but definitely reach out to some of the more experts like yourself, because that can help you save a few dollars on a purchase for sure.
Yeah, and it's happened to the best of us. I had that issue where I went and bought a collection out of a neighboring county a while back. I looked at it and said, I'm 50-50. And in the end, I was 50% wrong. I was 100% wrong. So it happens to the best of us. If it happens to you, don't give up. It happens. Just keep pushing, and you will eventually have that big score. All of us eventually, if you keep pushing, you find that one piece, and it will come through if you keep pushing, but you're never going to find it if you give up. And just and as much as you enjoy collecting, enjoy the community. There's a lot of great guys. Some of my best friends in my life right now come from this community, and those relationships have spread out much farther than just Civil War collecting. Because let's face it, if you're collecting Civil War images, you have your own personality as well. There's not like the average person's out collecting pictures of dead soldiers, right? So let's be honest. So all of us collectors, we all have something in common. And so that's my biggest advice to any person who's getting into this new hobby is, as much as you enjoy the collection, enjoy the community, develop relationships, develop friendships, and go on your way, because that's, to me, is just as important.
And on that note, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing all of this. I really appreciate it.
No problem, my friend.